Ngozi Obiora had been on the 40th floor for exactly 11 minutes when the elevator opened on a man the whole building was afraid of.
No potty name.
It was not the suit that stopped him.
Alright.
It was not the security detail 2 steps behind, already reaching for their earpieces. It was the 7 seconds she took, no more, no less, to set down her mop, press 2 fingers to a dead watch under her collarbone, and mouth 2 words to no one before she went back to scrubbing the marble like the elevator hadn't opened at all. Kang Tae-jun did not move for those 7 seconds either. "Who is she?" he asked the night concierge, low, without turning his head. "Cleaning contractor, sir. New rotation. Started this week." The concierge checked a tablet, frowning at the name like it might be wrong. Obiora in Obiora, Tae-jun said nothing. He watched her collect her cart, badge crooked on her collar, spine straighter than anyone's had a right to be at 10:30 at night on the 40th floor of a building that made grown executives lower their voices. Then he stepped into his own office, closed the door, and stood a long time at the window without turning on the lights. By the following month, he would know her name, her son's name, and the exact minute her husband had died 3 years, 8 months, and 11 days earlier. He would also know that his own signature was the reason for it. But that Thursday night, he knew none of it. He only knew he could not stop replaying the 7 seconds. 6 days earlier, none of this existed yet. Ngozi's morning began, as it always did, with arithmetic. Rent, 840,001 due in 9 days. Kelly's inhaler refill, 42,001 due now because the old one rattled empty when she shook it before school. Her mother-in-law's remittance, wired every second Friday from a country 6,000 miles and one grief away. $200, non-negotiable. Because Emeka's mother had raised 4 children on less and would not understand a daughter-in-law who raised one on more and complained. She did the sums twice, the way she always did, sitting at the kitchen table before Kelly woke, a cup of tea going cold beside her. "You're doing the numbers face again," said her son, appearing in the doorway in socked feet. Hair flattened on one side. "I don't have a numbers face. You do." "Mrs. Adiemi says so too." He climbed into the chair across from her and studied her with the calm, unbearable seriousness of a 7-year-old who had learned early that grief made adults transparent. "Is it bad numbers or okay numbers?" "Okay numbers," she lied, and touched the watch at her throat, stopped forever at 3:47, the hour her whole life had split into before and after. "Eat your egg." She had been an engineer once. A real one, with a master's degree from Hanyang University and a stamped license and a hard hat with her name printed on the strap. She had signed her name to inspection reports that mattered, had flagged concrete curing times on the Doinkan Heights site 11 days before the north stairwell came down, and took 41 people with it, her husband Emeka among them, on the job he'd taken to pay for her tuition. She had written, in her own hand, in the report nobody read twice, "Risk unacceptable pending retest." Someone above her had stamped over it, "Acceptable pending schedule." After the collapse, after the funeral, after the investigation that named contractors and quietly buried engineers, no firm in Seoul would hire the woman whose warning sat, unread, in a file drawer for 11 days while a building finished dying on schedule. She had a license nobody would use and a son who needed shoes. So she cleaned. She was good at it the way she was good at everything. Precise, unhurried, thorough in a way her supervisor at Bright Hands Facility Services, found faintly unsettling. She alone among the night crew could tell, by smell, when a solvent had been mixed wrong. She alone noticed the hairline crack widening in the stairwell tile at the old Uito site before maintenance did. You should have stayed an engineer, her friend Patience Mensah told her at the agency locker room that evening, tying her hair scarf with the brisk efficiency of a woman who had also buried more than she'd kept. You clean floors like you're still trying to save a building. Old habits. Old habits get you a new assignment. Apparently, Patience held up the clipboard. Fourth floor team's short. They're moving you to Kang Tower, executive wing, overnight starting tonight. Ngozie's hand went, without deciding to the watch at her throat. Everyone in Seoul knew the name Kang. Half the skyline had his family's initials cut into the cornerstones. The other half owed him money, or favors, or silence. Kang Tower, she repeated. The wolf of Gangnam's own front door. Patience said it with the relish of a woman repeating gossip she didn't fully believe and enjoyed anyway. They say he buried 3 rival bids last year and the men behind them right along with the paperwork. Don't look him in the eye if you see him. Not that you will. Men like that don't ride elevators with people like us. Ngozi thought of 40-2001 and a rattling inhaler and said nothing. That night, she rode the elevator anyway, mop cart and all, up to the 40th floor of a building with his name carved above the door in gold that had never once needed polishing, because it had never once been touched. She did not know yet that he had been standing at his window since 6, unable to make himself go home to an apartment with no one waiting in it. She did not know his grandmother had called that morning, coughing between sentences, to say the board would vote in 31 days, and she would like, before God took her, to see her grandson stand next to someone who loved him, rather than someone who merely suited him. She did not know that 3 floors below, a woman named Yoon Sara was already telling her father the engagement announcement could go out by month's end, because everyone who mattered assumed it was decided. Ngozi knew none of it. She knew the marble on 40 needed a specific solution, mixed 1 part to 9, because the stone here was imported and unforgiving of shortcuts. The way stone always was, the way buildings always were, if anyone bothered to read the instructions twice. She was on her knees at the base of the reception desk, working a stubborn heel mark out of white marble, when the elevator chimed behind her and a man the whole building was afraid of stepped out and, for reasons she would not understand for another 6 days, stopped moving entirely. Ma'am. The security escort's voice was too polite to be casual. The chairman requires the corridor. She stood, gathered her cart without hurry, and did not look at the man in the coat that cost more than her building's yearly rent, because Patience's warning sat in her chest like a stone, and because she had learned 3 years ago exactly what men who owned buildings did to women who lingered too long in their sightlines. Of course, she said, and wheeled her cart toward the service elevator, spine straight, badge crooked, watch cold against her collarbone. Kang Tae-jun watched her go and said, to no one, in a voice that surprised even him, wait. The security escort turned. Sir? But Ngozi was already gone, doors closing, and Tae-jun stood alone in a hallway that smelled faintly of lemon solvent and something he could not name. Something that had cracked, very quietly, somewhere behind his sternum. He did not chase the elevator. Men like him did not chase anything. Things arrived, or were brought, or were bought. But he stood there a long moment, then turned to his assistant, who had appeared at his elbow the way assistants of powerful men always seem to from nowhere, already holding a tablet. Bay, his voice was flat again, controlled again, the crack sealed back under marble of his own. The new cleaning contractor on this floor. Obiora, pull her file. Which file, sir? Employment or all of it? He was already walking away. Everything with that name on it. Bay Jun had watched his employer's back for a beat too long before he obeyed. Because in 9 years of service, he had learned to recognize the sound of a door opening somewhere it had been locked for a very long time. Ngozi Obiora rode the service elevator down 39 floors with her cart, her aching knees, and no idea that a name she'd stopped saying out loud 3 years ago was, at that very moment, being typed into a search field on the 40th floor of the tallest building she had ever cleaned. She checked her phone at the bottom. One message from Kelly's school. Inhaler note received. Please send refill by Friday. 4 days. She did the sums again, on the bus home, watch cold under her collar, and did not once imagine that the man upstairs was doing arithmetic of his own, older, heavier, unpaid for 11 days that had cost 41 people everything and one woman more than the rest. She went home. She kissed her sleeping son. She did not sleep much that night, though not because of the man in the coat. She had long since stopped believing that men like that noticed women like her, and long since stopped minding, because minding was a luxury the numbers didn't budget for. She was wrong, and would not find out how wrong for 6 more days, days that would end eventually, back on that same 40th floor, at that same hour, with a truth neither of them could see coming yet, folded quiet, inside an old file drawer, waiting, Kang Tae-jun's world, in those same 6 days. Moved at an altitude Ngozi never saw. It moved through boardrooms on the 61st floor of a different tower entirely, where 12 men in identical Navy suits discussed his marriage prospects with the same tone they used for quarterly earnings. It moved through a penthouse with 11 rooms and no photographs in any of them, because photographs required people who stayed. And nobody in Tae-jun's adult life had stayed long enough to be framed. It moved through phone calls from his grandmother, Kang In-suk, who was dying slowly and elegantly in a hammock on the edge of the city, and who ended every call the same way. 31 days, Tae-jun, then 30. Then it will simply be gone, and so will your excuse. It is not about excuses, grandmother, no, she agreed, in the papery voice that had once run half his father's empire from a kitchen table. It is about a cold house. Your mother used to say that. A cold house is not a home, no matter how many rooms it has. He did not answer that. He never did. Yoon Se-ra called twice that week, each time about seating charts and photographers, each time assuming a wedding that existed nowhere but her father's shipping ledgers and the board's collective comfort. She was beautiful in the specific, engineered way of women raised for mergers, flawless, humorless, entirely correct. The engagement dinner should be intimate, she told him over a lunch he had not wanted. 40 guests. The herald will want photographs of the ring before the toast. There is no ring, Se-ra. There will be. She said it the way she said everything, as a fact already filed. Your grandmother likes me. The board prefers me. It is a formality now, not a decision. He thought, unbidden, of 7 seconds and a stopped watch, and said nothing at all. That Thursday, the night the elevator opened on both of them at once, his lieutenant, Bae Jun-ho, placed a thin folder on his desk without a word, the way a man sets down something he suspects is a live wire. The full file, sir. Doinkan Heights. 3 years back. A pause, careful, her name is in it. Chief Engineer, Structural Review. In Obiora, Ngozi, Taejun did not open it that night. He set his hand flat on the cover, the way a man tests a locked door to see if it's truly locked, and found that it was not. He opened it at midnight, alone, penthouse lights off, city glittering coldly through glass he had never once thought to close a curtain over. He read for 2 hours. He read the addendum with a signature on it that was unmistakably his own, a formality, one line among 400, initialed on a Friday afternoon 3 years ago between 2 other meetings, dismissing a structural concern flagged 11 days prior as acceptable pending schedule. He read the casualty list. 41 names. He found near the bottom, in the surviving family notes nobody at the company had ever been required to read, Obiora, Emeka, site foreman. Survived by wife, Ngozi, and 1 son. He sat with that a long time, the city glittering on, indifferent, the way it always was. The way it had been the night his own mother worked, her last overnight shift at a laundry that never once thanked her for it. Somewhere below him, in an apartment with a rattling inhaler and a boy who noticed his mother's numbers face, a woman was sleeping without knowing that the man who had frozen in a hallway for her was now sitting with the exact shape of what his own hand had cost her. He closed the file. He did not sleep. And when the sun came up over Seoul, Kang Tae-jun made a decision that had nothing to do with boards or brides or 31 days, and everything to do with a debt he had not known he owed until the night he saw it, 7 seconds long, kneeling on his own marble floor. The elevator door had barely closed behind her the second night when Ngozi understood something had shifted, though she could not have said what. Her supervisor pulled her aside before her shift, clipboard pressed to her chest like armor. Change of assignment. You're off the general floors. Executive wing only. Direct request. She lowered her voice. The chairman's office, specifically, he asked for you by name. Patience, 3 lockers down, went very still. By name? By name. Ngozi, Patience turned, scarf half-tied, eyes sharp with the particular alarm of a woman who had watched other women vanish into arrangements like this before. You do not go anywhere alone with that man. Whatever this is, it's a cleaning assignment, Patience. Nothing about a chairman requesting a cleaner by name is a cleaning assignment. She was not entirely wrong, though not in the way she meant. Ngozi rode up to 40 that night with her cart and her spine straight and found, waiting at the reception desk where she had scrubbed the heel mark 2 nights before. Not the chairman, but his assistant, a neat, tired-eyed man who introduced himself as Bae Jun-ho and did not meet her eyes for more than a second at a time. Mrs. Obiora, the chairman would like a word, when convenient. I'm working, Mr. Bae. He's aware. A pause, careful as a man setting down glass. He asked me to say it will not take long, and that it concerns your son's school fees, and a case file from 3 years ago. He thought you should hear it from him directly, and not from paperwork. Every muscle in Ngozi's body went still. She had spent 3 years learning not to flinch at the words Doinkan Heights, had trained herself the way she'd once trained apprentice engineers, methodically, until the words could pass through her like any other words. She did not flinch now either. She set down her cart with the same unhurried precision she brought to everything, and followed Bei Jun Ho down a corridor she had mopped twice already, toward a door with no name on it. Because men like Kang Tae-jun did not need their doors labeled. He was standing at the window when she entered, the whole city laid out cold and gold behind him, and for a moment neither of them said anything at all. Mrs. Obiora, his voice was quieter than she expected. Not the voice of a man who owned half a skyline. Thank you for coming. I didn't feel I had much choice, Chairman Kang. Something crossed his face, not offense. Something closer to being caught. You had a choice. You could have refused Bay at the door. Most people don't, with a name like mine attached, and I'm aware that's not the same as choosing freely. He gestured to a chair she did not take. I'll be direct, because I think you've had enough people be indirect with you about this particular subject. What subject is that? Doinkun Heights. She did not sit. She did not sway. 3 years of arithmetic held her upright. I don't discuss that site, Chairman, not with agencies, not with lawyers who called and stopped calling, and not with the company that owned it. I know. He turned from the window fully now, and she saw for the first time that the coldness the whole city whispered about was a kind of exhaustion wearing a very good suit. I read your report last night. The addendum, the schedule note, the 11 days between your warning and the collapse. I read your name on the review committee and your husband's name on the casualty list. And I want you to know I did not know until last night that both of those names belong to the same family. Does it matter whether you knew? It should have. That's precisely the problem. He said it simply, without performance, and that was somehow worse than if he'd wept. My signature is on the addendum that overrode you, Mrs. Obiora, one line, one Friday afternoon, 3 years ago. Between 2 other meetings I remember, and one I clearly did not think mattered enough to remember at all. I am telling you this myself before my lawyers find a way to tell you nothing, because you deserve better than 11 more days of silence. Ngozi's hands at her sides had gone very cold and very still. Say that again. I approve the report that dismissed your warning. I own the company that built on a schedule instead of a retest. I am, in every way that matters, one of the reasons your husband is dead, and I would like, he stopped, recalibrated, started again with less polish and more truth. I would like to do something about that. Not because it fixes it, it doesn't, but because 11 unread days should not be the last word on a woman who was right. The room was very quiet. Somewhere below, the city hummed on, unbothered, I don't want your guilt money, Chairman Kang. Her voice, when it came, was even, precise, the voice she used on faulty solvent ratios and cracked tile. I've been offered guilt money before. It comes with an enda and a smile, and it changes nothing about the 11 days. I'm not offering money. He held her eye. I'm offering a job. My grandmother is dying and has given me 31 days, now 28, to marry someone before a board vote decides my family's next 50 years without me in the room. I do not intend to marry Yoon Sarah, whose family sees the company as a shipping route and me as cargo. I need a wife on paper for 1 year, publicly convincing, privately negotiated on your terms. In exchange, I will personally fund the reopening of the Doinchan Heights investigation, cover your son's medical costs without condition, and restore your engineering license to active status through legitimate review, not favor, review. You'll set the terms. I'll sign them. She stared at him a long moment, the watch cold against her collarbone, and when she finally spoke, it was not what he expected. Why not simply give me the money and let me disappear? It would be cleaner. Because you don't want to disappear. He said it like he'd already studied her enough to know. I watched you for 7 seconds 3 nights ago, Mrs. Obiora, and in 7 seconds you told me more about what you want than most people tell me in a year of meetings. You want to be seen doing the work right. That's not something I can buy you. I can only get out of the way of it. Ngozi thought of 42,001 and a rattling inhaler and a license gathering dust in a drawer beside a stopped watch, and a boy who noticed his mother's numbers face and never once complained about being poor. She thought of Patience's warning and found it did not in the end apply, because this was not a man cornering her. This was a man handing her a door and stepping back from it. If I agree, she said slowly, I keep my son with me, full custody of every decision about him, always. I do not move into your house without my own locked wing. This ends the day I say it ends, with no penalty and no clawback on the investigation funding, regardless of what happens between us. And I do not clean anymore. Not because it's been at me, it never was, but because I want my license back doing the work it was made for. Those are not requests, Chairman Kang. Agreed. He didn't hesitate. All of it. In writing, drafted by a lawyer of your choosing, not mine. One more thing. Her chin lifted, and for the first time something almost like challenge entered her voice. You tell your grandmother, your board, and your father's ghost the truth about why you're doing this. Not romance, not optics. The truth. I won't be anyone's convenient secret. Kang Tae-jun looked at her for a long moment, really looked, the way he had not let himself look at anyone in longer than he could easily admit, and something in his chest, cracked 6 days ago in a hallway, opened another careful inch. Agreed, he said again, quieter this time. Neither of them shook hands. It didn't feel like that kind of agreement. Ngozi Obiora walked out of that office, still wearing her cleaning uniform, cart abandoned in the hallway, and did not cry until she was 3 blocks from the building, alone at a bus stop, watch pressed hard against her palm, whispering to a dead man that she was sorry and that she was going to make it count for something, whatever this turned out to be. Behind her, on the 40th floor, Bae Jun-ho found his employer still standing at the window and said the only thing 9 years of service had taught him was safe to say. I should have flagged the addendum myself 3 years ago, sir. I saw her name in the file back then and said nothing. I am not proud of that. Tae-jun didn't turn around. Neither am I, Jun-ho. We'll have to be something else instead. The city glittered on below them, 28 days now until the vote, and somewhere in it a woman who had just agreed to become his wife was already doing the only arithmetic she trusted, not what this would cost her, but what it might finally repair. The wedding was small, fast, and entirely unromantic by design, a civil registration, 2 witnesses, a photograph for the board's newsletter that made Ngozi look composed and Tae-jun look, according to Bae Jun-ho's private opinion, faintly stunned for a man who'd arranged the whole thing. Kang In-suk attended from a wheelchair, watched the 5-minute ceremony with the sharp, assessing eyes of a woman who had run half an empire from a kitchen table, and afterward took Ngozi's hand in both of hers. You didn't cry, the old woman said, delighted, Sarah would have cried. Practiced tears on cue like a soap opera. You look like you were signing a contract. I was signing a contract, grandmother came. Insuk laughed, a dry, papery sound that turned into a cough. Good, I've had enough soft women in this family pretending to be strong. Come to dinner Sunday. Bring the boy. I want to see if he has his mother's spine or his father's kindness. Both, I hope. Better than either alone. Insuk squeezed her hand once, hard, and let go. The house Ngozi and Kele moved into was not the 11-room penthouse, but a smaller residence Tae-jun kept near the river. Fewer rooms, more windows. Staff who bowed a half-second too long the first week and gradually stopped once it became clear the new Mrs. Kang remade her own bed and scolded anyone who tried to do it for her. You don't have to do that, the head housekeeper told her the third morning, hovering, I know I don't have to. Ngozi smoothed the last corner with the same precision she'd once brought to concrete tolerances. I want the house to feel like mine while I'm in it, even if it's temporary. The housekeeper reported this dutifully to Bae-jun Ho, who reported it less dutifully to Tae-jun over a status briefing that had nothing to do with it. She rearranged the kitchen spice rack, sir. Alphabetically, Chef is unsettled. Why is he unsettled? He alphabetized his own rack years ago and has apparently been wrong about the order of cardamom and cayenne this entire time. Tae-jun, against every instinct, honed over 36 years of not smiling in board meetings, smiled. He found himself, in the second week, arriving home earlier than his schedule required, telling himself it was to review documents in the study rather than to catch the sound of Kele's socked feet thundering down the hallway or the smell of something unfamiliar and warm drifting from the kitchen. He came home on a Wednesday to find his sterile, chrome and white kitchen transformed, pots simmering. The counter dusted with a spice he didn't recognize, Ngozi barefoot at the stove with her sleeves rolled, singing something under her breath in a language that wasn't Korean or English. What is that? He said from the doorway, not quite a question. Jollof rice. And you're staring like you've never seen orange food before. I've never seen this kitchen look like anyone lives in it. Someone does now. She tasted from the wooden spoon, added something, tasted again. Sit, eat first, then whatever you came home to review can wait. That's not, he stopped. Sat, it was, apparently, exactly what he'd come home to do. Kele appeared in the doorway a moment later, took one look at his mother and the tall, silent man at the counter, and delivered his verdict with the flat honesty of a 7-year-old. You look at mommy like Papa's photo looks at us, sad and happy together. Neither adult had a response to that. Ngozi turned back to the pot with sudden focus. Tae-jun studied the grain of the wooden table like it contained a quarterly report. Later, after Kele was asleep, Ngozi found Chef O and 2 junior staff huddled by the pantry, arguing in rapid, unguarded Korean about whether the new Mrs. Kang's cooking would ruin the household's palate or finally teach the chairman what a real meal tasted like. She let them argue 2 full minutes before she spoke, in flawless, unhurried Korean of her own. For the record, I use less salt than Chef O, and my palm oil is better than his imported olive oil for that dish specifically. You may tell him I said so. The silence that followed was total. Chef O, when he recovered, bowed so deep his forehead nearly touched the counter, and from that night on, called her Sansang Nim, teacher, every time she entered his kitchen, which she found, privately, the funniest thing that had happened to her in 3 years. It was 2 nights later that the file found her, rather than the other way around. Tae-jun had asked her, offhandedly, if she'd help him sort his late father's old construction archives, decades of paper nobody had touched, stored in a locked study she assumed held nothing more dangerous than dust. She was 3 boxes in, gloved and methodical, when she found a folder out of sequence, wedged behind a shelf brace like someone had shoved it there in a hurry, years ago, and forgotten. Doincheon Heights, Structural Review Addendum, it read. Her own handwriting was inside it, on the original report. And beneath it, initialed in blue ink, she recognized now from a wedding certificate signed 2 weeks earlier, K. Tae-jun. She read it standing up, once, then sitting down, twice more, the room going very quiet around her. It was the same document he'd described to her that first night in his office. She knew that, had already forgiven the shape of it, or told herself she had. But the folder held more than he described. A second memo, dated the same week, from Bae Jun-ho's predecessor, flagging the override for legal review before it was quietly buried. A cost projection showing exactly how much a full retest would have delayed the opening and exactly how much money that delay would have cost, weighed in black and white, in a spreadsheet cell she would remember for the rest of her life, against 41 names that hadn't existed yet. He had known, she realized, not just the broad strokes he'd confessed. He had known, somewhere in the company's paperwork, that his signature sat one document away from a cost-benefit table that measured her husband's life in construction schedule savings. And he had let her move into his house, cook in his kitchen, let his grandmother hold her hand, without once mentioning that this second document existed. She did not confront him that night. She put the folder back exactly as she'd found it, wedged behind the shelf brace, and told herself she needed to think. She was wrong to wait. But she did not know that yet. Down the hall, unaware his wife had found the second memo, Tae-jun sat in his own study with the original folder's twin, a full accounting he had compiled himself over the past 2 weeks, quietly, without telling her, tallying in a private ledger exactly what those 11 days had cost. Emeka Obiora's salary projected forward 20 years. Ngozi's lost wages across 3 blacklisted years. The settlement Kang Group had paid the families 42 million won total across 41 deaths, a number so obscene in its smallness he'd had to set the pen down twice while writing it. He had not shown her this ledger either. He told himself it wasn't time. He told himself a great many things that week, all of them versions of not yet, and none of them changed the fact that concealment, however gently intended, was still concealment. A debt quietly compounding interest while both of them, in separate rooms of the same house, kept their most dangerous knowledge to themselves. The board vote narrowed to 18 days, then 11, and with the narrowing came Yoon Se-ra, sharpening. She arrived at the Kang residence unannounced on a Tuesday afternoon, dressed for war in the softest possible fabric, and found Ngozi in the garden with Kele, showing him how to graft a rose cutting, patient, absorbed, dirt under her nails. How industrious, Sarah said from the path, not bothering to lower her voice. Does the help usually garden in the family's roses, or is this a special arrangement? Ngozi did not look up from the cutting. I'm not the help, Miss Yoon. I'm his wife. For now. Sarah's smile was flawless and entirely without warmth. Contracts expire. Cleaners get reassigned. I've read the file on you, Mrs. Obiora. I know precisely what you were doing on this family's payroll 8 months ago. It's very sweet, really, how far a mop and a sad story can take a person if the right man happens to be in the right hallway. Kelly, small and fierce, stood up from the rose bed. My mommy is an engineer. She's smarter than everyone in this whole garden. Kayleigh, Ngozie's voice was gentle but final. Go find Mr. Bay. He has the kite he promised you. She waited until her son was out of earshot before she rose, brushing dirt from her knees, meeting Sarah's eyes without flinching. You can say whatever you like about me, Miss Yoon, but not in front of my son, and not while pretending it's about me, and not about the seat you didn't get. Careful, you're new to this family. I've known it my whole life. I've known hard work my whole life. That travels further than a shipping fortune, in my experience. Ngozie's voice never rose. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a rose to finish grafting, and you have, I imagine, a much longer drive home than you'd like. Sarah left without another word, but not before Director Han Myung-sik, waiting in the car she'd arrived in, watched the whole exchange through tinted glass with the flat, calculating patience of a man who dealt in optics for a living. Han had never liked the marriage. He said as much at the emergency board session 3 days later, choosing his words with the bloodless care of a man who considered euphemism a professional skill. I want to be clear, this is not a moral question, he told the room, Tae-jun seated at its head, unreadable. It is a resourcing and optics conversation. Our Southeast Asian and Gulf partners have expressed, discreetly, some concern about brand alignment. The market does not reward sentiment. Chairman, it rewards predictability, and a foreign bride with a controversial employment history at one of our own failed sites is not predictable. It is exposure. Her name is Ngozi Obiora, Tae-jun said, very quietly. Not exposure. And the site didn't fail, Director Han. We overrode the engineer who told us it would. The room went silent in the particular way rooms go silent when a truth has been spoken that everyone present had agreed, tacitly, never to say aloud. Regardless, Han recovered smoothly. The vote is in 9 days. I'd encourage the chairman to consider what message stability sends versus what message this arrangement sends to people who do not have the luxury of sentiment. Tae-jun said nothing further. He did not need to. 9 days, ticking down, and somewhere beneath his composure, a decision was already hardening into something no boardroom euphemism would talk him out of. The gala came 6 nights later, the Kang Foundation's annual benefit, black tie, 400 guests, cameras stacked 3 deep at the entrance. Ngozi wore deep green, no diamonds, the stopped watch on a chain tucked just beneath her collarbone where only she knew it was there. Tae-jun met her at the base of the stairs and, for one unguarded moment before the cameras found them, simply looked at her the way he had not let himself look at anyone in longer than either of them could say. You look like you're about to walk into a boardroom, he said. I am. It just happens to have a string quartet. She took his offered arm. Try to look less like you're bracing for impact. I'm always bracing for impact. It's a professional habit. Almost, he smiled. The evening held, for nearly 2 hours, the fragile shape of an almost good night. Insuk holding court from her wheelchair, delighted, Kelly allowed 1 hour past bedtime, charming the string quartet into letting him hold a bow. Ngozi trading dry, precise remarks with donors who arrived braced to condescend and left oddly humbled. Twice, in a quiet corridor between the ballroom and the terrace, Taejun's hand found the small of her back, and twice neither of them moved away. It ended at the champagne table, where Yoon Sara had been drinking steadily and smiling less steadily, and where she finally said, loud enough for the 6 nearest tables to hear, the sentence that would be repeated in gossip columns for a month. I still don't understand the theater of it. Sara's voice carried, bright and cutting. She's just the cleaner. Everyone in this room knows it. Some of us were simply too polite to say so before the wedding invitations went out. The room's noise didn't stop all at once. It thinned, table by table, the way a tide goes out, until Taejun's voice, not loud, not raised, landed into the silence like something dropped from a great height. She's my wife. Sarah blinked, recalibrating, semantics, chairman. We both know what she was hired to be. No, he stepped forward, close enough now that his voice didn't need volume to carry. You know what she used to clean, miss. Yoon. I know what she used to build. Doingchan Heights Structural Review. Before my company overrode her and it cost 41 people their lives, including her husband. She has a master's degree from Hanyang University and a license this family is in the process of restoring, because it should never have been taken from her in the first place. So no, not semantics. Fact, he turned slightly so the nearest cameras could not miss it. She's my wife. Say it again in my house or at my events, and you will find out exactly how far this family's patience for optics conversations extends. Sara's face went through 3 expressions before it settled on something like fear. She left without another word, trailed by a father already calculating the cost of the alliance he'd just lost. The room, after a beat of stunned silence, began tentatively to applaud, not for the drama, but for the flash of something rarer, a powerful man choosing a side in public and meaning it. Ngozi said nothing until they were in the car, alone, city lights sliding past the windows. You didn't have to do that. Yes, Taejun said, looking straight ahead, jaw tight with something that wasn't quite triumph. I did. She studied his profile a long moment, the stopped watch warm now against her skin instead of cold, and thought, for the first time since a folder had upended her 2 weeks earlier, that perhaps she owed him the conversation she'd been avoiding. She never got the chance to start it. Her phone buzzed in her clutch before the car reached the bridge. An unknown number, a voice she didn't recognize, offering, in clipped and gleeful Korean, to send her the second memo. The one your husband bought her cottage keeping quiet, and a single photograph followed a moment later, the cost-benefit spreadsheet, 42 million won divided by 41 names, Taejun's own ledger, photographed through a gap in a study door he had not realized wasn't fully closed. Ngozi Obiora read it once, in the back of a moving car, beside the man who had just defended her in front of 400 people, and felt something in her chest go as still and cold as a watch stopped at 3:47. She did not scream. She did not even raise her voice, and that, later, was the part Taejun could not stop hearing. You've had a ledger, she said once the car had stopped, and Kelly was safely asleep upstairs with the housekeeper. Weeks. You've had a private accounting of exactly what my husband's life was worth to your company's schedule, and you let me cook in your kitchen, and let your grandmother hold my hand, and let your board watch you defend me in a ballroom without once telling me it existed. Ngozi, don't. One word, flat as a closed door. I I found the first memo 2 weeks ago in your father's archive. The override your initials. I told myself I understood. A man signing one line among 400, careless, not cruel. I was prepared to forgive careless. She held up her phone, the photograph still glowing on the screen. This isn't careless. This is a spreadsheet. Someone sat down and weighed my husband against a construction schedule in a cell with a dollar sign in it, and you kept it in a drawer for 2 weeks while I fell for the idea that you were different from the signature on that first page. I was trying to find the right way to show you there is no right way to show a widow the number her husband's life came to. Her voice did not rise. It only sharpened the way a blade sharpens quietest right before it cuts. There is only honesty offered when you have it, or concealment dressed up as timing. You chose concealment. Twice, first with the site override, and now with this. He said nothing, because there was nothing true he could say that would not confirm exactly what she'd already understood. I am not angry that the accident happened, Tae-jun. Accidents happen in the industry I gave my life to, and I have made a kind of peace with that, God knows how, over 3 years. I am angry that you let me believe you were the one telling me the whole truth, when you were, in fact, only telling me the version that let you keep being the man in the ballroom who saves the widow. She drew a breath, steady, precise, the way she once steadied her voice before presenting a report she knew no one wanted to hear. I do not need you to save me from a grave you helped dig, Chairman Kang. I needed you to be honest about the shovel. What do you want me to do? Nothing. Tonight, she was already moving toward the stairs, toward her son, toward the locked wing she had negotiated for herself on the first night months ago, when she still believed contracts were the only thing at risk. I'm taking Kelly to Patience's for a few days. Don't call the school and change the pickup roster. Don't call your lawyers. Just don't. I need to think somewhere the numbers don't have your name in the spreadsheet. She did not slam the door. That was the part he could not stop hearing. Long after, not the words, not even the photograph, but the quiet, deliberate click of a door closing exactly once, the way she did everything, with total control, leaving him standing in a hallway that had gone, all at once, colder than any boardroom he'd ever sat in. The house, in the days that followed, went silent in a way staff noticed and did not comment on. Chef O stopped cooking the dishes he'd learned from her. The spice rack stayed alphabetized, cardamom before cayenne, exactly as she'd left it, because no one had the heart to change it back. Kang In-suk called once, coughing harder than usual, and did not ask questions, only said, "Fix it, or don't call me again until you have," and hung up before he could answer. Bae Jun-ho found him on the third night, still at the window, still not turning on the lights. Sir, a pause, longer than usual. I should tell you something I should have told you 3 years ago, when the file first crossed my desk. I recognized her name back then, Obiora, on the casualty list, cross-referenced against the review committee. I flagged it to legal. I was told the matter was closed, and I let it be closed. Because closing files was my job, and asking questions was not. I have thought about that decision every day since, sir, and I did not have the courage to say so until you didn't have the courage either. Tae-jun turned, finally, something raw moving behind his eyes. You're telling me this now because Because watching you lose her the same way I once let her be lost, quietly, through silence, dressed up as procedure, is more than I can carry twice in one lifetime. Bay straightened his jacket, formal again, the moment closing as fast as it had opened. The investigation reopening you promised her. It's still on your desk, unsigned. I'd suggest that's where honesty actually starts, sir, not in a car. On paper, where it can't be taken back. Taejun looked at the folder on his desk, the reopening authorization, the full public release of both memos, his own signature waiting at the bottom of a document that would cost him more than money the moment it went public. Across the city, in Patience Mensah's cramped, warm apartment, Ngozi sat at a kitchen table, much like her own, doing arithmetic that had nothing to do with rent for the first time in 3 years, trying to calculate not what she'd lost, but what, if anything, was left worth trusting. You could just take the money and go, Patience said gently, setting tea in front of her. The medical funding, the license restoration. Keep the terms, lose the man. No one would blame you. I know. Ngozi wrapped both hands around the cup, watch cold again at her throat, the way it hadn't been in weeks. But Kelly asked me tonight why we left, and I didn't have an honest answer that didn't also indict me a little. I found the first memo 2 weeks ago and said nothing either, Patience, I told myself I was thinking. Maybe I was just as afraid of the truth as he was. That's not the same thing. No, Ngozi agreed quietly. But it's close enough to keep me from being entirely sure I have the right to be this angry alone. She did not go back that night, or the next. But she did not file for anything final either. No lawyer, no clawback, no clean break of the kind her original terms allowed her to take without penalty. She sat, instead, in the space between two silences, watching to see whether the man on the other side of the city would choose the harder honesty now that the easier one had already failed them both. The press conference was Taejun's idea, and every lawyer in the building told him not to hold it. You'll be admitting corporate liability on camera, sir, the general counsel said, flat with disbelief. Voluntarily, before any court compels it. The exposure alone is the point, Taejun said. Draft the statement. I'm signing my name to it, not legals. He stood in front of the cameras 4 days later. No teleprompter. Bae Jun-ho at his shoulder. Kang In-suk watching from a wheelchair in the front row against her doctor's advice, and said the thing his company had spent 3 years paying lawyers to avoid saying. 3 years, 8 months, and 11 days ago, 41 people died in the collapse of the Doinjeon Heights North stairwell. Our own structural review team flagged the risk 11 days before it happened. I initialed the addendum that overrode that warning. I am not here today because a court ordered it. I am here because the company's silence has already cost one family everything, and I will not let it cost them a second thing, the truth. He released both memos in full, the original override and the cost-benefit table Ngozi had found photographed through a gap in a study door. He announced the investigation's full reopening, funded independently, with an outside engineering board he would not chair or influence. He announced a settlement fund for every surviving family, not just one, structured as ongoing support rather than a lump payout designed to buy silence. He named the fund, at In-suk's quiet suggestion beforehand, the Doincheon Family Standard, a permanent, board-independent safety review office with veto power over any Kang Group site, reporting to no one in the family at all. This will cost the company, he said, when a reporter asked the number outright. Approximately 4.6 billion won this fiscal year, and my seat on my own board for the 90 days our bylaws require following a director's formal censure, which I have already requested for myself. That is the cost of 11 unread days. I consider it underpriced. The board, predictably, revolted, Director Han called it. In a closed session, Bay relayed almost verbatim, a self-inflicted branding catastrophe of historic proportions. Tae-jun sat through the censure vote without defending himself once, and when it passed, he stood, thanked the room with a courtesy that unsettled everyone present, and walked out to begin his 90 days. He went that same evening, not home, but to Patience Mensah's building, and stood outside it a long time before he knocked. Ngozi opened the door in an old sweater. Kelly's homework spread across the table behind her, and looked at the man who had just very publicly bankrupted a piece of his own power on television. I saw the broadcast, she said, before he could speak. Then you know I'm not offering you money tonight. No? Something in her posture eased, fractionally, though her voice stayed careful. What are you offering, Chairman Kang? A correction. Not charity. You were clear about the difference once, and I should have honored it sooner. He held out a single folder, thinner than the others had been. The Independent Safety Office reports to no Kang. It needs a chief engineer who understands exactly what it means to be overridden and ignored, because she's the only one qualified to make sure it never happens the same way twice. I'm not offering you a job because I owe you one, Ngozi. I'm offering it because you are, on paper and off it, the best structural engineer this company has ever failed to listen to. That's not sentiment. That's a hiring decision any honest board would make. She took the folder and did not open it, studying him instead, the tired lines around his eyes, the absence, for once, of the practiced coldness the city called wolfish. And the marriage is yours to end exactly as we agreed whenever you say it ends. I'm not here to renegotiate that. I broke something more important than a contract when I let you find that spreadsheet in a photograph instead of from me. I don't expect a folder and a press conference to fix it. He looked at her, steady, unguarded in a way she'd never once seen from him in a boardroom or a ballroom. I only wanted you to know that whatever you decide, the truth doesn't go back in the drawer this time. That part isn't conditional on us. Come in, she said finally. Kayleigh's been asking about you. I told him you were busy fixing something. Apparently that was true. He stepped inside, and for the first time in 3 years, the numbers Ngozi did at her kitchen table that night had nothing to do with survival, and everything to do with what, if anything, could still be built on ground that had already once given way. She did not move back into the house that week, or the next. She made him wait, not out of cruelty, she told him plainly, but because trust, like concrete, needed proper curing time. And she, of all people, was not willing to build on a schedule again. She took the chief engineer position on her own terms, negotiated in writing by her own lawyer, full editorial authority over every safety review, a seat on the independent board that answered to no Kang, and a public announcement crediting the original 2023 warning to engineer N. Obiora by name in every press release the company issued about the new standard. Tae-jun signed all of it without changing a line. She came back to the house on a Sunday, 6 weeks after the press conference, not because the contract required it, but because Kelly had asked. With the same devastating plainness he brought to everything, are we ever going to eat jollof at the big kitchen again? Or was that just for a little while? And Ngozi had found she did not have a version of the truth that didn't involve going back to find out. Tae-jun met her at the door himself. No staff, sleeves rolled like a man who'd been trying badly to cook. I attempted the rice, he admitted. Chef O refused to help on principle, said it wasn't his to ruin. It's ruined? Comprehensively, she laughed, a real one, surprised out of her, the first in weeks, and let him take her coat. They ate reheated leftovers instead. The three of them at the kitchen table, and afterward, once Kayleigh had fallen asleep on the couch, with a book still open on his chest. Ngozi and Tae-jun stood on the terrace overlooking the river, the city glittering the same cold gold it always did, indifferent and patient. I owe you the rest of an apology, he said. Not the press conference version, the private one. I'm listening. I told myself I was protecting you from the worst of it, finding the right time. What I was actually doing was protecting myself from watching your face while you read it. He said it plainly, no performance left in him after 90 days of censure and silence. My mother used to say a cold house isn't a home, no matter how many rooms it has. I spent most of my life thinking that meant furniture, or warmth, or company. I understand now she meant honesty. A house with secrets in the drawers is cold, no matter how many people are standing in it. Ngozi turned the stopped watch over once in her fingers, the way she did when she was deciding something. I was just the cleaner, once to half this city, and to Sarah, and honestly, some mornings to myself. Her voice was quiet, sure. I let that word sit on me for 3 years like it was true. But I was never just anything, Tae-jun. I was an engineer who told the truth 11 days early and was overruled by men who didn't want to reread a report twice. I am the woman who is about to make sure that never happens on any site with your family's name on it again. That was never beneath me. It was always the work. I just needed someone to stop pretending otherwise. I'm not pretending anymore. He faced her fully. I don't want a wife on paper for a board vote that's already lost me my seat anyway. I want the woman who alphabetizes spice racks and argues with my chef in flawless Korean and looked at 4.6 billion won like it was a down payment on decency instead of a number. I love you, Ngozi, not the contract. You, she was quiet a long moment, city lights moving in the water below them, and then she reached up, unclasped the chain at her throat, and held the stopped watch between them. 3:47, she said softly. The exact minute my life split in half. I've worn it 3 years like a wound I refused to close, because closing it felt like forgetting him. She looked up. I don't want to forget him, but I don't want to live inside 347 forever either. I choose to stay, Tae-jun, not because a contract says so, and not because you fixed a spreadsheet. Because I choose it. That's the only kind of yes I have left to give anyone, and it's yours if you still want it. I still want it, he said, and when he kissed her, gentle, unhurried, the first and only kind of kiss the whole story had been saving, the watch sat warm between their joined hands, stopped forever at the same minute, finally no longer the only time that mattered. 6 months later, the Doinan Family Standard opened its permanent offices on the 40th floor of Kang Tower, in the same corridor where a mop cart had once stood outside a door with no name on it. Ngozi Obiora, she kept the name. On every document, by her own choice, cut the ribbon herself, in a tailored suit instead of a cleaning uniform, 41 photographs of the Doinkan dead, framed in the lobby beneath a single line she had written herself. They told the truth. We are finally listening. Yoon Se-ra's family quietly withdrew from Seoul's merger circuit within the year. Her father's shipping contracts reassigned to firms with less appetite for scandal. Se-ra herself was last seen, according to Bae-jun Ho's careful sources, running a considerably smaller import business in Busan, considerably more polite than before. Director Han Myung-sik resigned before he could be asked to, and the safety office he'd once called a branding catastrophe now bore, on its founding charter, the signature of every board member who had once voted to censure the man who built it. Kang In-suk lived long enough to see her grandson stand at a real wedding this time, smaller than the first, warmer. Kele in a tiny bow tie, insisting on carrying the rings himself, and pressed into Ngozi's palm, before the ceremony, a jade hairpin that had belonged to Tae-jun's mother. She would have alphabetized the spice rack too, the old woman said, eyes wet and delighted. Welcome home, granddaughter, properly, this time. The stopped watch, cleaned and repaired by a jeweler Ngozi trusted, now sits behind glass in the Standards lobby, ticking again, beside a small brass plaque given in memory, and now in hope, to the next engineer brave enough to write risk unacceptable and mean it. Beside it, each spring, the office awards one full scholarship in Emeka Obiora's name to a young engineer from a family who could never otherwise afford the tuition, the first recipient. A quiet 19-year-old from Incheon was handed her acceptance letter personally by a Black woman in a tailored suit, who told her simply that someone had once done the same for her, though it had taken the truth 3 years, 8 months, and 11 days too long to arrive. Some debts, Ngozi liked to say, were never meant to be paid back all at once, only forward, one honest signature at a time. If Ngozi's quiet arithmetic meant something to you tonight, I'd love to know which moment landed hardest. Was it the gala, when he finally said the words out loud? Or the ledger, when the truth almost cost them everything? Tell me in the comments, and while you're there, let me know, would you have taken his first offer in that office, or made him wait the way she did? If stories like this one, the watching, the withholding, the truth that finally comes home, are the kind you want more of, stay close and subscribe, because there's always another quiet dignity waiting to be seen. Being seen never costs anything. Being honest is the only price that was ever real. See you in the next story.